Hey, Shalom, 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 Israel. All praises to Yahweh Ba'ashah, Yahweh. First and foremost, we got to face to the east of Jerusalem, our homeland, and give all glory, all honor, all praises to Yahweh Ba'ashah, Yahweh. Right? So, Israel, Yasharallah, we have a pandemic here, right? So let me get the definition of the word of the meaning of pandemic. It says widespread occurrence of an infectious disease over a country or world at a particular time. So the narrative here and the subject matter here is our children. Our children are being led astray, okay? And if Yahweh said the same, we're going to go in more detail, understand why our children are being led astray. Okay, so I'm gonna get some, some devastating numbers here. In terms of the household, our households, right? Because remember, our households are being led by women, a lot of them. Okay, and we're going to see through the scriptures that is one of the problems. Okay, so this is a AI overview. All right, and it says as of early 2026, reports indicate that over 70% Israel, over 70% of young black children are born into households without a resident father. 70%. Okay, it says while 2023 data showed 47.5% of black children without a resident father, right? So we see that it's increasing. And so, all this is prophesied on in terms of how our children would be led astray, you know what I'm saying, and not having the righteous guidance, of a righteous father who believe in Yahweh Ba'ashah, Yahweh. Even myself was raised up, in a single parent household, my mom, okay? So let's get some prophecies here, okay? So we're going to start out with the book of Sirach, because remember, all this is prophesied on Israel in terms of our children, the condition of them, and I don't know if you guys haven't heard of those teen takeovers, when you get just a mob of angry black children, between 1, 2, 300 of them, just showing up, in various places and just taking over, the whole area, because I'm here in Chicago, okay, and it's really, really frequent here in Chicago to see that happening, right? Okay, so again, let's get some prophecy here. Let's go to the book of Sirach and understand exactly what's going on, okay, and why our children are being just misled like that, okay? Let's go to Sirach chapter 39. It says, but he that is given his mind to the law of the Most High, Yahweh Ba'ashah, is occupied in the meditation thereof, will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient and be occupied in prophecy. So we're occupied in these prophecies, understanding what's unfolding in front of us, so we will know how to righteously, move, right, and maneuver, in these times. It says, he will keep the sayings of the renowned man, and where subtle parables are, he will be there also. He will seek out the secrets of grave sentences and be conversant in dark parables. So we're looking at these prophecies contained here in our book, the Bible, right, to understand exactly, what's unfolding in front of us, okay? So let's get the first one here, right? Let's go over to and understand Isaiah, because Isaiah prophesied on this over 2,000 years ago and told us exactly the circumstances that we would be confronted with as we are this day, and understand why our children are just like wild animals, okay? Let's go to Isaiah chapter 3, right, and break this down, okay? So this is Isaiah chapter 3, right? It says, behold, the Lord Yahweh of hosts doeth take away from Jerusalem and from Judah the stay and the staff, the whole stay of bread and the whole stay of water. So now this is a twofold to this in terms of the bread and the water. Now we know it's a famine, and we'll see that later if Yahweh say the same. We'll see that famine, right? But what is this bread? You know what I'm saying? What is this water? So let's go over to Sirach 15 and understand, because these children aren't being exposed to this. They need to be exposed to Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh in our culture, right? Let's go to Sirach chapter 15 and get that. See what this bread and water is, okay? So this is Sirach chapter 15. From the top it says, "He that feareth Yahweh will do good, and he that hath the knowledge," poignant point right there, "of the law shall obtain her," right? So these children don't have the understanding, and as parents, we have to convey to these children Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, right? It's like a perpetual destruction. You know what I'm saying? Because our parents weren't brought up in this. They don't have the understanding, I'm saying, to be able to convey this, to our children. But this is why Yahweh, I'm saying, is done what he's done through Mashiach Yahweh, to wake us up out of this, okay? It says, see, with the bread, verse 3, it says, "With the bread of understanding shall he feed them and give them the water of wisdom to drink." So the bread is the understanding there, right? And the water is the wisdom, okay? And these children, they don't have that, So, this is, again, what Yahweh is doing, through his beautiful mercy, right? And his beautiful son, Mashiach Yahweh, to wake us up, to bring us back to our culture and back to the conditions that we need to, be exposed to, okay? Let's go back to Isaiah 3. So now we see that, right? Let's go back to Isaiah 3. We'll pick it up at verse 2. And also we're going to have a problem here. So look at Isaiah 3 and 2. It says, "The mighty man and the man of war, the judge and the prophet and the prudent and the ancient." Look at that, right? You don't have any of that, because when you see, these so-called black men, right, they're so, conditioned, with this Babylonian ideology. They don't understand any of this. You know what I'm saying? Right? 3, it says, "The captain of 50 and the honorable man and the counselor and the cunning artificer and the eloquent orator." We don't have that. You know what I'm saying? But again, by the grace of Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, he's starting to put his spirit in us to fear Yahweh, to love Yahweh, to keep his commandments, the fruits of the spirit, so that we may convey these things to our children and bring them back, if Yahweh say the same, okay? Let me see. Okay, right? Because as we just read, we don't have, the righteous men, right? Or the righteous women to be able, to share this with our children, okay? Verse 4 says, "And I will give children to be their princes, and babes shall rule over them." This is why in the ghettos, these bad doggone kids, are like little animals and monsters. And we're going to see that a little later, that rule your neighborhood. You can't go outside, you can't go and just conduct, sorry about that. You can't, go and conduct your regular business without being threatened by these little savages, okay? So, it's a famine or something that's happening, right? And we also, as we saw earlier, in Isaiah chapter 3 and 1, that bread, it's a twofold to that. So let's go see what that famine is, right? Let's go over to Amos chapter 8, because we got a famine here. We have these older adults, right, that are just so caught up in this doggone world and all this fluff and foolishness, and aren't teaching these children to fear Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai. And as a result, this is what you got. Okay? Let's go to Amos chapter 8. Because we got a famine going on here. Okay? Let's go to Amos chapter 8. And we're going to pick it up at verse 11. It says, behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, that I will send a famine in the lands. Let's see what this famine is, Yasharala. Not a famine of bread, nor a thirst of water. This is a physical condition in terms of being hungry, physically hungry, and physically thirsty. It ain't talking about that, right? Right? It says, but the hearing of the word of Yahweh. These people don't want to hear nothing like that. You know, when you go to Israel, you know what I'm saying, 9 times out of 10, they do not want to hear anything you have to say regarding Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai. You know, if it's not, trying to get a big house or becoming a rapper or whatever, your career, whatever it is, they ain't trying to hear none of that, okay? And so this is the famine that Amos is talking about here, okay? 12, it says, and they shall wander from sea to sea, and from the north even to the south. They shall run to seek, it's like it says, they shall run to and fro to seek the word of Yahweh, right, and shall not find it, because now is the time, to seek Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai, when he may be found. This is the time right now. Just like in the days of Noah, people marrying, partying, drinking, all of that doggone stuff. And so, when Yahweh put the hammer down, all of them were mesmerized, okay? 13, it says, in that day shall the fair virgins and young men faint for thirst, because they're thirsting for the knowledge of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai. This is spiritual food. Because, you can have all this stuff, all this material stuff, and you still be empty. You still be starving, because you don't have the spirit of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai in you, right? Remember, Yahweh know what we need, not what we want, okay? It's not about all this stuff, because remember, Yahweh's going to burn all this stuff up anyway. Your 2 and 3 houses. What the hell you need 2 and 3 houses for? What you need all those cars for? You can only live in one house at one time and drive one car at one time, right? So, this is what it's talking about, right? That thirst, okay? I'm going to take it over to Isaiah 55. Because remember, now is the time to seek Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai. This is a thirst that these people are thirsting for, and they don't understand it. It's spiritual food, right? So this is Isaiah chapter 55 and verse 6. It says, seek ye Yahweh while he may be found. You have to seek Yahweh while he may be found. This is the time. This is the door. You know what I'm saying? This is the opportunity right now to seek Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai. It says, call ye upon him while he is near, right? It says, 7, it says, let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts, and let him return unto Yahweh, and he will have mercy upon him, and to our power, for he will abundantly pardon. Exactly. So now's the time to seek Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai through Mashiach Yahweh Shai, who is our advocate. You know what I'm saying? He's the mediator, Mashiach Yahweh Shai, right? His blood, is, saving us, okay? Let's go back. Right, so now is the time, Israel. Let's go back to Isaiah chapter 3. Go back to Isaiah chapter 3. This is the problem. We'll see the problem with our children. You know what I'm saying? Because we don't have the righteous examples. I have to be a righteous example, for the children. You know what I'm saying? For my family members, anybody, for Israel, right? I can't be, double-minded like that. A hypocrite, doing all kind of I'm saying one thing, and doing 10 times, the things opposite to what I'm saying. That's called a hypocrite, okay? Right? This is Isaiah 3. We'll pick up verse 5. It says, and the people shall be oppressed, every one by his neighbor. This is what's happening in your neighborhoods. Throughout this place, Mystery Babylon, which is America, you're being oppressed by these little demon children, right? We're going to see what happened and why, right? It says, and the people shall be oppressed, everyone by another, and everyone by his neighbor. See, the child shall behave himself proudly against the ancients. These children don't have any respect for the gray, no, for the gray heads. They have no respect, you know what I'm saying, for older people at all. Zero, okay? It says, and the base against the honorable. So these are base, you know what I'm saying, against the honorable. You know what I'm saying? You know, which is the older adults, the elders, right? So let's see why. Let's go over to Wisdom of Solomon. I'm going to pick up at verse chapter 4. Let's see why. Because we got something happening here. Let's go to Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 4. I'm going to pick it up at verse 1. It says, watch this, right? It says, better it is to have no children. You see a lot of jakes with all these unfruitful monsters, right? All these unfruitful monsters that are just, causing havoc, you know what I'm saying, in your neighborhoods, in your towns. You can't even go to the mall, you know what I'm saying, wherever you go, you see these little demons, right? Right, it says, and to have virtue, for the memorial thereof is immortal, because it is known with Yahweh and with men. Right? So it's better to have no children, than to have, a group of disobedient children like that. Okay? Right? Let's keep this thing flowing, if y'all would say. Let's jump down to verse 6. And this is why, right? It says, Wisdom of Solomon 4:6, it says, for children begotten of unlawful beds are witnesses of wickedness against their parents and their tribe. Because Jake is just laying with anybody. You meet this person, you know what I'm saying? Next thing you know, you're in the bed with this person. You don't know who the hell this person is, right? Who this person then laid with. And so now you start producing these little demons like that. You know what I'm saying? Because remember, it's called soul ties. This is why women, you know what I'm saying, can't have multiple partners like that. Because remember, the woman is the receiver. So every time, you know what I'm saying, a man goes into her, you're taking on that spirit. And when you see, how these women, how they just glorify all these bodies they have, you know what I'm saying, and they wonder why, you know what I'm saying, they're bipolar, which is spirits. They have all these different damn attitudes. It's because they didn't lay with all these damn men, these demons. They don't know who they are. And so as a result of that, this is why your children are like that. Okay? This is just why your children are like that. All right? On these unlawful beds. Okay? Let's keep this thing going. Let's stay in the book of Wisdom of Solomon. And go to the previous chapter. Chapter 3. So this is Wisdom of Solomon chapter 3. We'll get verses 16. It says, as for the children of adultery, see that? They shall not come to their perfection. This is why Yahweh is killing a lot of them when they're so young like that. You see Yahweh slaughtering them. Yahweh, he say, he kill and he make alive. So, it's the effort of Yahweh by Yahweh is taking these little demons out like that, okay? Right? It says, and the seed of the unrighteous beds, remember we talked about the bed earlier? Right? And the seed of the unrighteous bed shall be rooted out. So Yahweh's going to root them out. It says, they shall, 17, it's like it says, for though they live long, yet shall they be nothing regarded, right? And their last age shall be without honor. So, in other words, a young fool becomes a old fool. Counterproductive. Not able, you know what I'm saying, to give it any positive insight or righteous insight to help these children. So they become old fools. You know what I'm saying? This is 18, it says, or if they die quickly, see how they die quickly, see, right? When they're young like that, They have no hope, neither comfort in the day of trial. Right? It says, for horrible is the end of the unrighteous generation. See that? So now we understand why these children are like that. And we're going to see more when we go back over to Isaiah chapter 3. Okay? I'm going to pick it up at Sirach. Watch this. Even Sirach talks about this, about these unrighteous children. And so, Yahweh, he's going to give us the issue, what's causing this. What's causing this? Why is this being done like that? With the source of the problem. Let's go to the book of Sirach 16. Let's go to Sirach 16. We're going to pick it up at verse 1. It says, watch this. It says, desire not a multitude of unprofitable children, neither delight in ungodly sons. Though they multiply, rejoice not in them, except the fear of Yahweh be with them. Trust not thou in their life, neither respect their multitude. For one that is just is better than 1,000. Look at that. And better it is to die without children than to have them that are ungodly. Look at that. It says, for by one that have understanding shall the city be replenished, but the kindred of the wicked shall speedily become desolate. 6, it says, in the congregation of the ungodly shall a fire be kindled, and in a rebellious nation wrath is set on fire. So, that's the lake of fire, right? The lake of fire. Unprofitable, unfruitful children. And we're going to see why, okay? We read earlier, the pandemic, with the households, 70%, of Negro children, of black children, don't have a father. All right? And if they do have a man in there, he's so, unknowledgeable, right? Or he's being emasculated by the woman, that he's being driven, to seek, alcohol or narcotics or some drug like that. Okay? This is bad because we know, here, let's get that real quick, right? Again, if you do have a man in the house, the mother, is so without understanding, when you try to go to the son and explain to him, she hates that, right? Let's get there real quick. Let's go to Deuteronomy and see why. Let's go to Deuteronomy 56 and see why. Can't make this stuff up, right? You're trying to help this boy, show this boy, but the mama, who has no understanding, rejects all of that. Let's go to Deuteronomy 20:56. See, look at this. It says, watch this. It says, the tender and delicate woman among you, which would not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground, for delicateness and tenderness. This is righteousness right here, in terms of the delicateness and tenderness, right? And being meek and subtle and humble. See, her eyes shall be evil toward the husband of her bosom, and toward her son, and toward her daughter, because, the mama is rejecting, right? And so when the man comes to try to explain, and help this child, the mother is being rebellious. That's what that's talking about, okay? Let's go back over to Isaiah. So now we're starting to see what the problem is, right? Right? And we're going to see, it's the woman, right? Because again, in the beginning of this presentation, we went and looked at the facts and the numbers. 70% of black households ain't got no man. So just wrap your head around that. That means that these uneducated women, right, are trying to raise these kids. And when we say uneducated, we're meaning in Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai. That's what we talk. We talk about this old worldly garbage. That's garbage, okay? Right? Let's go back to Isaiah chapter 3. We'll pick it up at verse 6. Here, but before we go there, let's go over to 1 Peter 4 and 17. Because what's going to happen? Remember, we saw all those those unfruitful and unproductive children, as well as the parents. This is what's going to happen to them, right? And we pray it don't happen to us. We pray that Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, keeps His Spirit in us, so that we may fear Yahweh and love Yahweh and keep His commandments as He commands us, with meekness, right? Humility, all the fruits of the Spirit. So let's go over and see what's going to happen to those children and the parents if they don't come back to Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, right? Let's go to 1 Peter 4, and we're going to start at 17. Watch this. It says, for the time is come that judgment must begin at the house of Yahweh. So Yahweh is going to start with us first, right? It says, and if it first began at us, what shall the end be of them that disobey not the gospel of Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai? We saw it earlier. Remember the fire? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, the lake of fire, right? 18, it says, and if the righteous scarcely, right, be saved, where shall the ungodly and the sinner appear? You see that, Israel? You know what I'm saying? So, we pray, that Yahweh, will start raising up righteous, Yahweh-fearing men to lead these households into righteousness, which He's doing, okay? All right? That's that beautiful hope, right? So let's go back over to Isaiah 3. Let's go back up to Isaiah 3 and pick that thing up. And watch this. Isaiah 3, we're going to pick it up at verse 6. It says, watch it, it says, when a man shall take hold of his brother of the house of his father, saying, thou hast clothing, be thou our ruler, and let this ruin be under thy hand. Watch the response, right? Because they don't know how to lead in righteousness. You know what I'm saying? They all into this world, some type of substance, or woman now, or whatever. Right? Watch this response. It says, 7, it says, in that day shall he swear, saying, I will not be a healer. See that? Because he don't understand, you know what I'm saying, how to heal this people. And the only recourse is Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai. It says, for in my house is neither bread nor clothing. Now this bread is the bread of understanding that we saw earlier. And to put on, and the clothing is to put on Yahweh Shai. Okay? Right? I think it's Galatians 3:27, somewhere in there. So you have to put on Yahweh Shai. So this is the clothing or the cloak that we have to have on, and the bread of understanding, as we read earlier. It says, make me not a ruler over the people. Because remember, a young fool becomes an old fool. Okay? See? Okay. 8, it says, for Jerusalem is ruined and Judah is fallen, because their tongue and their doings are against Yahweh, right? To provoke the eyes of His glory. In that bad behavior, right? That bad behavior. Okay. Let's get 2 Timothy 3. So we understand now. And so now when you see these men in these households, this is what they do. And also a lot of these ungodly priests, the shepherds, you know what I'm saying? These ignorant shepherds who call themselves pastors are pathetic. Let's go to 2 Timothy 3 and 1. 2 Timothy 3 and 1. These preachers are pathetic. Slakia. Yeah, let's go to 2 Timothy chapter 3. Talk about that, Israel. 2 Timothy 3. These passages are ridiculous. Let me see. Yeah. 2 Timothy 3 and 1 from the top it says, this know also that in the last days, right, perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, think about homosexuality, you know what I'm saying, and all that kind of stuff. Look, covetousness, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, right? Unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinents, fierce, despisers of those that are good, right? Traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of Yahweh, having a form of godliness, right? Oh yeah, preaching all that doggone stuff. Don't know a doggone word about the scripture. Just picked up the Bible, just misleading people, causing people to stumble. Right? 5. It says, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof, for such turn away. Run from them people. Right? It says, for us, it's like it says, for of this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women laden with sins, led away with divers lusts. Right? It says, ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Never able to come to the knowledge of Yahweh Basham. Having their own insight and all that garbage. You know what I'm saying? Leaning on their own understanding. Right? That's the problem. Let's go back over to Isaiah with these so-called priests and pastors. Ridiculous. So, it's like, if you have an issue, right? Say if my hand was hurting or whatever, what I'm saying, so I go to the doctor, and he gives me a diagnosis, right? Okay, so, you sprained your hand. So he'll give me a prognosis to heal my hand, all right? To get better, to heal you completely. Going to the source. And the source is Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai. That's the healing mechanism that we need. We require this. We gotta have this, okay? Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, okay? Right? Let's go back over to Isaiah 3. Pick up at verse 9. It says, and show of their countenance, right? And the show of their countenance do witness against them, and they declare their sins as Sodom. Right. These homosexuals don't give a damn no more. They out in our children, all in our school systems or food systems, right? See, they hide it not. Woe unto their soul! Exclamation point, right? It says, for they have rewarded evil unto themselves. Because you're teaching these children at 5 and 6, they don't know what the heck they're talking about. To be whatever they want to be. You got 3,000 different identities that you identify with. What the hell is that? That don't make no doggone sense. How can you, respect, a 3-year-old or 4 or 5-year-old's views or their understanding about who they are? They're still growing up. You don't let them determine that. You know what I'm saying? That's crazy as heck, man. What is that? That's wickedness. That's what that is. Right? 10, it says, 10. Isaiah 3 and 10, it says, say ye to the righteous that it shall be well with you, for they shall eat the fruit of their doings. So you're going to eat the fruit of your doings. You're going to eat that fruit of your doings, right? So let's go to Colossians and see what fruit we need to have. Let's go to Colossians chapter 1 and pick it up at verse 10. This is the fruit that Yahweh requires. So this is Colossians 1 and 10. It says that ye might walk worthy in Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, unto all pleasing, bringing being fruitful in every good work. This is a fruit that that Yahweh requires. And increasing in the knowledge of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushua. This is good fruit, to show these children Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushua, our culture, right? Our posterity, right? Let's go back to Isaiah 3, pick it up at verse 11. This is the problem, Israel. 70% of our households, black folk, is run by a woman. Emotional woman. All over the place. Okay? So, this is Isaiah 3 and 11. It says, woe unto the wicked. It shall be ill with him, for the reward of his hand shall be given him. Exactly right. As for my people, watch this, Israel, children are their oppressors. Yes, we read about that. And woman rule over them. Let's see what happens when the woman, unknowledgeable woman, rules over them. The woman who don't know Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushua, that emasculates her man who's trying to show the children. Let's see what happens. Right? It says, O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to error. Who's leading them? The unknowledgeable, unfruitful woman. Right? 70% of our households are ran by women. We brought those numbers, in the beginning of this presentation and proved that, okay? See, it says, they which lead thee cause thee to error and destroy the way of their paths. See that? They destroy the way of paths. These children, these boys growing up homosexual, don't know who the hell they are. A lot of these dudes, in they bag, in their feelings, man. You can't look at it. That's crazy. You looked at him wrong. You know what I'm saying? You killed that man, because he looked at you wrong. Oh, okay. How's that sound? Makes no doggone sense. And so we see, because a woman is naturally emotional like that. So if the son, is being exposed to that all through his life, then he can possibly become that way too. Where he's not rationalizing, with his brain and thinking things out before he moves, okay? (13). It says, Yahweh standeth up to plead and standeth to judge the people. Yahweh will enter into judgment with the ancients of his people and the princes thereof, for ye have eaten up the vineyard. They eaten up the vineyard and grind the faces of the poor, saith Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushua. Right? Okay? So we see what the issue is. It's these women. Right? It's these women. Predominantly, these women. And we see these children, man. They have no respect. They have no regard because their mama, and Ezekiel talks about that, so is the mama, is the daughter. Something like that. I apologize about that. So if the mama is straight reprobate, it's a high provocation that the daughter's going to be reprobate as well, okay? So Yahweh's going to do something, which he's doing already. Let's go to Jeremiah 23. Go to Jeremiah 23. I'm going to pick it up at verse 1. It says, woe be unto the pastors that destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture. This is what these pastors are doing. Remember, we read earlier how they, go to these women's house, silly, laden down with lust and all of that stuff, and tell them all that doggone foolishness. It says, saith Yahweh. It says, therefore, thus saith Yahweh, power of Israel, against the pastors that feed my people. You have scattered my flock and driven them away, and have not visited them. Behold, I will visit upon you the evil of your doing, saith Yahweh. That's your fruit. You don't get that. Because you're causing these people to error. Right? It says, and I will gather the remnant. That's the 1/3. We're included in that. of my flock out of all the countries whither I have driven them, and will bring them again to their folds, and they shall be fruitful and increase. See that fruitfulness of our works, positive works? For it says, and I will set up shepherds over them which shall feed them. This is exactly what Yahweh's doing. You know, Yahweh is bringing righteous men to preach this gospel, 10 toes down. Thus says Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai. Right? It says, and they shall fear no more, nor be dismayed, neither shall they be lacking, saith Yahweh. Because this is what these preachers are doing. Let's go to Jeremiah. Calling these people to error like that, right? So this is every time you pastors, you Sunday worship, Easter, pork chop eating pastors. This is what you're causing, man. You're causing these people, you know what I'm saying, to error and go against Yahweh and rebel against him. Okay? So this is Jeremiah chapter 28 and 16 says, therefore thus says Yahweh, behold, I will cast thee from off the face of the earth. This year thou shalt die. Why? Let's see why. Because thou hast taught rebellion against Yahweh. When you teaching these people, you know what I'm saying, all this foolishness, this Christmas garbage, you know what I'm saying, this killing garbage, this Easter garbage, this Sunday worship garbage, you know what I'm saying? You can eat whatever the hell you want to eat. Ain't no law, but yet they still take a tithe, which is in the law. This is what you're doing. You're causing the children of Israel to rebel against Yahweh, and you're going to pay for that, okay? Right? Let's go to Proverbs 22. It's ridiculous. And so now we see, you know, why our children are in the, just this destroyed condition. We see why. Because of the mamas. Or the unfruitful mamas. And here, let me reward all the virtuous women. Yes, all the virtuous women, you know what I'm saying, you know, that are teaching their children, you know what I'm saying, Yahweh Ba'asham, we have to reward you, okay? 10 toes down. Keep on doing it, you honorable women, you know what I'm saying, you virtuous daughters of Zion, right? Okay, keep on doing that in Yahweh Ba'asham, you know, and being subservient, you know what I'm saying, you know, to Yahweh Ba'asham, to your head, your husband, okay? So this is Proverbs 22. Let's get Proverbs 22 and 6. So this is what we need, do, and must do. This is Proverbs 22:6. It says, train up a child in the, it's like it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Right? So we train our children up in Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai from the beginning, okay? You know, and give them an opportunity, you know what I'm saying? Because if we're not teaching our children Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, we are a complete stumbling block, and we've offended and we failed these children, okay? So once again, I'm going to face to the east where Jerusalem is and give all glory, all honor, all praises to Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai. Shalom, Israel.